live on the red carpet with producer Holly Payne for the death of Superman. And so, we talked to Jon a couple minutes ago, and it's very, odd to see a film that went from development and died and be made into a documentary.
Yes,
so
it is.
Tell me a little bit about the passion of being able to really dig into the stuff that Hollywood doesn't usually like to share when something fails.
Right.
And being able to get that material so you can make it.
Well, it's not as easy as anyone might think. I mean, I guess nobody would think it would be that easy, and it isn't. It takes a lot of time. Jon, our director, had been mining the internet for many, many years and found amazing concept art and was fascinated with the project for a long time. He, once we got the crowdfunding started, word got to Tim Burton somehow, and his producer, Derek Fry, was an amazing help because he was the reason we got Tim Burton. He had been passionate about Superman Lives for years. It was actually the movie that he worked on after Mars Attacks. So he was our connection to Tim Burton. Once we got Tim Burton, then the floodgates opened, and we got Rick Heinrichs, because he's the kingpin.
Absolutely.
So yeah, once we got that, then we got everybody else. But it took a long time, and people don't realize that documentaries take a long time.
Yeah.
How
long has been your process for this?
Well, from beginning to end, we're at almost 2.5 years now.
Yeah.
But of course, when you're dealing with comic book properties, the fans want it now.
Right.
And that's not how documentaries
Lawyers
work.
don't let that happen.
No, that's right. So it takes a long time, and we had to wait until everybody was available, and that was probably the longest process of the whole.
What are some of the things that maybe surprised you the most? Because there's a candor when you have years separating a project, and when people have moved on, and the confidences of a project that can happen.
Right.
People then can talk about things. What surprised you, either through somebody in particular or just knowledge that you learned in this set?
Well, I would say that the first person I was most impressed with in their candor was Tim Burton, because Tim Burton, it was a very painful process for him. For many years, he was kind of, holding on to this, and this was almost like a purging for him. So to have that much time pass and to actually be able to talk to people who are already weirdos like he is, not that he's a weirdo, but it's like, we're of the same tribe.
Yeah.
So we felt very comfortable. And he's very disarming and very funny in the film, and I think people are going to get a different impression than they may have perceived before. So he was probably the person that I was most like, wow, he's being so forthright, and it was very refreshing.
And for you as a producer, what are you most proud of that you guys have been able to accomplish? I mean, one, that you have a documentary. That in itself is a huge accomplishment. But, there are always days when you're making a film where you're going, man, this may not happen.
Honestly? Yeah. Do you want complete candor for me?
Absolutely.
Jon is my boyfriend. We are a couple.
That you're still together?
And we're still together. And honestly, we've learned so much about each other and our own creative processes, and we have very different slants.
Yeah.
He is way more in the comic book realm. I love comics, but I'm not the comic book. I'm a movie fanatic.
Right.
My family's been in the business for years, so I was coming at it from a very different perspective. So when you meld those two things, the interest of a movie not being made and the comic book and superhero interest, it was kind of a perfect match.
Yeah, because then you'll be able to go not too much inside baseball with him, and for you be able to kind of keep it mainstream so that.
Well, mainstream, I wouldn't say that. Not mainstream at all. No, I would say really talking about the story. The story was really important, and people's stories and humanity and how people. I'm also a woman, so that's like coming from a more sort of place from the heart was very important to me, and I wanted that to reflect in the movie, and I think it does really well. And same, Jon's heart is all over this movie. So
wonderful. And then, just lastly, do you think that a film that was pushing this many boundaries with a licensed superhero property could ever be developed and made into a film? Do you think this is kind of the death knell in a certain kind of way to maybe that kind of outside the box pushing of known properties?
I don't want to predict anything. I think that we've been, going with a certain way of making comic movies now for a while. Yeah. This was so out of the mainstream that it was too risky for the entities, the powers that be to really take that risk. I would like to see movies be pushing the envelope like this one was going to.
Yeah.
because we haven't seen that yet. We have not seen it yet. I mean, I love superhero movies. I would say the X-Men is the closest thing to pushing those boundaries, because you're talking about race, you're talking about all sorts of different things. But this was like, it would have been a Tim Burton Superman movie. I don't know what else to say. It would have been a Tim Burton Superman movie, and that gives a whole different element to it that we've never seen. So.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.